This month was the 20th anniversary of Everquest, so I thought I'd do a video about my favorite place in the game. On the continent of Ered, anyone who studied dark magic were exiled from Eredin and formed a new city on the opposite side of Tuxkulia Forest. This city is called Painil, and is filled with necromantic sights to behold, like ghosts taking a stroll, an undead skeleton band in the bar, and a giant ominous hole. It's one of the most out-of-the-way places in the game, and as it has a special eccentricity that comes with being a town founded by necromancers. It's these details that I really appreciate. Everquest is one of the earliest massively multiplayer online games, and it really shows. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We have a three-dimensional space for the first time. And much in the same way pixel art of the 2D era has become its own art form, low polygon graphics evoke an otherworldly feeling that only helps the experience of escaping into a fantasy realm. It's like a Boris Vallejo painting got texture wrapped onto a Minecraft guy. I love it. And it turns out, Everquest is still running. Sony was going to close down Sony Online Entertainment, but a few original developers bought the properties and formed Daybreak Game Company, who are still providing subscriptions and releasing updates. There are progression servers, but even before those were introduced, the players had a demand for a version of the game that stopped updating before the third expansion. For most players that is Everquest's golden era. And that is where Project 1999 comes in. It's an emulated server community that runs Everquest and its first two expansions, Ruins of Cunark and Scars of Velius. See, a lot of people will say that the game started to go downhill as soon as Everquest's third expansion was released, Shadows of Lucklin, which added these but-ugly models and moved any relevant content to the literal moon. But Project 1999 never moves past the previous expansion, Scars of Velius. It's got a lot of players too, and that just sets my cold dark heart aflutter with nostalgic feelings. And not just that I'm used to playing World of Warcraft and paying for it. The typical MMORPG model is to treat each expansion like an entirely new game, which has its perks. I still like this model, and World of Warcraft Legion was great. As someone who played Everquest in its prime, I think while the experience has changed wildly, I think players want the same thing, to play in a world that feels alive and consistent. The Elder Scrolls Online had a model where you had to partake in every bit of content in order to even access the end game, but now has changed to letting players who buy an expansion get into the content right away, which is what the consumer base wants from their online experience. This followed suit with World of Warcraft, where each new expansion comes with a high-level character included, so you can enjoy the new content immediately. I play World of Warcraft, so I can't say this is negatively impacting the fun of the game. But Shirley Curry, the Skyrim grandma, just started a Elder Scrolls Online playthrough, and it's as jarring as possible to start playing when what you're used to is any other Elder Scrolls game. Embracing the time-dependent nature of online game experiences is an interesting approach, but above all else it is designed this way to make money. Engagement means time, and time means subscription fees. But engagement still has to be fun. Well, either fun or emotional manipulation, but that's a topic for another day. World of Warcraft was made by people who loved Everquest. It in part inspired all the online fantasy games of today, but Sony was just going to trash all their SOE properties, and some devs had to pull some community funds and purchase the bunch in order to save them. That's how Daybreak Entertainment came to be. And now at Blizzard, Mike Morhaime has retired. Bobby Kotick is now all over Blizzard's development decisions, so get ready for an era of crap. Which brings us around to Project 1999, and what's the problem with the post-Velius era of Everquest? During the production for Shadows of Lucklin, the developers attempted to modernize the game, and for me that hurt the game on an aesthetic level. I much preferred the old models, but that was no big deal. I could just switch them to the way they were, at least for most of those models. But there weren't just changes in presentation. In the middle of production, at the height of its popularity, a bunch of venture capitalists did what they set out to do and sold their shares of the game. Suddenly there was a massive restructuring, and a lot of people working on Everquest lost their jobs. A successful game company firing a huge chunk of its workforce despite record success so its shareholders can cash out? Where have I heard that before? The truth is that it is becoming harder and harder to deny that the trick to being the most successful in a capitalist system is to be the most morally bankrupt, the least self-aware and the most willing to exploit people worse off than you. The gaming industry is a culture, but it's a consumer culture. So its priorities will always be with making money, rather than enriching the human experience. Everquest began development before most people considered the internet anything other than a fad. There is a capitalist mentality dictating every decision that leads to a game of this scope even existing. The saying is, you can't go home again. That after you leave home and live as an adult, returning to the place you grew up becomes lost to time. Your house might still be there, but both you and your loved ones will inevitably change over time. To freeze a moment of time and return to it, allowing it to give you the exact experience you need from it is an impossible service, especially if you're trying to make money off of it. No, you can't go home again. But maybe you can.